until I drove past it and saw a sold sign on the gate. They didn't call. They didn't ask. They just cashed out and expected me to disappear. My own mother looked me in the eye and said, "It's our name on the deed. Honey, not yours." They thought they'd stripped me of everything, leaving me with nothing but a dusty folder of my grandfather's old sketches. But as they sat at the closing table, waiting for their millions, they realized one thing. They sold the house, but I owned the land. The air in the valley was crisp as I turned onto the gravel driveway of my grandfather's estate, the place I had called home for 30 years. But as the tires crunched, my heart stopped. A massive sold sign was hammered into the lawn. I sat there, the engine idling, staring at the front door I'd painted myself last summer. I tried my key, but it wouldn't turn. The locks had been changed. Suddenly, the door swung open, and there stood my father, holding a glass of expensive scotch. He didn't look sad, he looked relieved. My mother stood behind him, avoiding my eyes. "We did what we had to do, Chloe," he said coldly. "They'd sold my future to a developer while I was away on a business trip. No phone call, no warning. Just a cold-blooded transaction that turned my life into a pile of their debt-clearing cash. This house wasn't just brick and mortar. It was my grandfather's sweat and blood. He'd spent 50 years building this legacy, and when he passed, everyone knew I was the one who deserved it. I was the one who stayed behind to fix the leaking roof while my parents were off on Mediterranean cruises they couldn't afford. I was the one who sat by Grandpa's bed, listening to his stories of the land, while my father was busy looking for his next get-rich-quick scheme. My parents viewed this estate as a giant ATM, a way to erase decades of their own financial laziness and bad investments. To them, the land was just collateral for a life of luxury they never earned. They didn't care about the history or the promise Grandpa made to me. They saw a for sale sign as their final escape, regardless of who they crushed in the process.
I moved into a cramped motel room on the edge of town. The smell of stale smoke a constant reminder of how far I'd fallen. My parents had even kept my furniture, claiming it staged the house better for the new owners. All I had left was a single cardboard box filled with what they called Grandpa's junk. I spent hours sifting through yellowed tax receipts and old farm maps, my eyes stinging with tears of frustration. Then, tucked inside the lining of an old leather sketchbook, I felt something stiff. It was a single sheet of heavy parchment, dated 3 days before Grandpa passed. My breath hitched as I read the legal description. It wasn't a poem or a letter. It was a separate deed for the 3 acres the house actually sat on. The lawyers had processed the sale based on the main parcel, but this paper proved the home site had been severed years ago. I finally had it. The boardroom at the title company smelled of expensive perfume and fresh ink. My parents were there, dressed in their finest, beaming as they chatted with the lead developer, a man who looked ready to bulldoze my childhood memories into a luxury shopping mall. "Just one more signature," the lawyer announced, sliding a gold pen across the table. I didn't knock. I just walked in, the heavy parchment clutched in my hand. The room went silent. My mother's smile vanished, replaced by a look of sheer annoyance. "Chloe, don't make a scene," she hissed. "The deal is done." I ignored her and placed the old paper directly over the closing documents. The developer's lawyer leaned in, his brow furrowing as he read the stamps. "Wait," he whispered, his face draining of color. The room felt like it lost all its oxygen as he looked up at my parents. "You can't sell this house. You don't actually own it." The developer's lawyer stood up, his chair screeching against the floor. "This document is a life estate with a remainder interest," he announced, his voice echoing in the stunned silence. My father's hand began to shake, the gold pen rolling off the table. He didn't understand that while Grandpa gave them the right to live there, the actual ownership, the remainder, belonged solely to me. By law, they couldn't sell the property without my signature, and they definitely couldn't sell the land beneath it. The developer turned on my parents, his eyes narrowing with a terrifying coldness. "You took a 6-figure earnest deposit for a property you didn't have the right to transfer?" he growled. The deal wasn't just dead. It was a legal radioactive zone. My parents had spent the deposit already, and now they were facing a massive breach of contract lawsuit and potential fraud charges. The trap they'd set for me had snapped shut on them. The silence in the room was deafening as my parents realized their life of unearned luxury had just evaporated. They looked at me, not with the arrogance they'd shown at the gate, but with a desperate, hollow pleading. "Chloe, please," my mother whispered. "We're your parents. You have to help us." But the help they wanted was for me to sign away my soul to cover their lies. I didn't say a word. I picked up Grandpa's deed, walked out of that office, and drove straight back to the estate. I'm moving back in tomorrow, and this time the locks are staying exactly how I want them. My parents are facing a mountain of debt and a long road of accountability, but the land is finally safe. What would you do? Would you save the people who tried to destroy you,